Newsmaker Sunday with Fox 10's John Hook.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Sunday. We have heard so much about it. It even overshadowed to some degree the budget negotiations that went on this past week in Washington. But still, at this point, no deal for DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, as it's known, a policy that has protected young undocumented immigrants who came to the U.S. as children, that President Trump decided to terminate in September. We're talking about probably 1.8 million people in the country, maybe more. Here in Arizona, maybe 52,000 or so. We're going to talk about it this morning with attorney Phil Ortega. He's with the Mesa-based law firm of Udall Shumway. He deals with DACA kids and immigration matters. Before we get going, I want to play you this scene that played out here in Phoenix just a few days ago. This was a DACA protest, and it was met by a counter-protest. Take a look.
They don't want borders, but they like to shut people out. Hypocrisy at its finest.
So this is kind of where we are right now. We're kind of a nation divided on this question. Although the public polling seems to indicate a sympathy for the DACA kids, there's still some reticence and still some feeling out there that how dare people who are here illegally demand anything. We're going to talk about it here with Phil Ortega. Thanks again for being with us.
Thanks
you
for
see
having me.
Scenes like that, you're dealing with it on the ground. Kid comes to you, and sometimes it's not a kid, it's somebody 30 years old who was brought here as a child.
Right.
Give me kind of just an overview of what you're seeing when people come to you for help.
I'm seeing a lot of scared, uncertain people who don't know what's going to happen next, what kind of life they're going to have for themselves in the United States.
They legitimately fear deportation.
Legitimately fear it. I mean, you know, it's difficult for them to say that they're going to be deported. You know, it's difficult for them to imagine it because they've been here for so long, but that fear is real to them. I mean, they just don't know, you know, they face so much uncertainty. You know, so yeah, it's very real.
You know, I think when people see folks, dreamers, protesting in front of ICE, right in front of the headquarters in Phoenix, after a while people go, they're not going to be deported. If they were going to be deported, they certainly wouldn't protest in front of ICE.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's a very bold move, and then to go on TV cameras and all of that, they say these folks aren't going to get deported.
Right.
Is it a legitimate worry?
Yes, and the reason is the Trump administration's policy by way of ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, is to deport anyone that is removable. So that means anyone that doesn't have lawful status. Many of these dreamers don't have lawful status or face their lawful status expiring once their DACA cards expire. So once that occurs and they're now left without this protected status, they face deportation if they...
So they could get caught up in it?
They could get caught up in it.
Okay, so this is stemming from when Obama, President Obama, created DACA in 2012, right? And urged people to sign up. Yeah. He also urged them to come out of the shadows. Are there a lot of people you're talking to who are going, I wish I'd never signed up for this because now the government knows who I am and I am out there? Absolutely.
That's the biggest fear when President Trump rescinded DACA in September. What people's options were: leave my house that I have a mortgage with or that I'm renting and go live somewhere else because the government has my address now. I gave that to them. I freely, you know, shined a light on myself and said, hey, here I am, I'm illegal, this is where I am. So now they face that option, leaving, going back to a country that barely knows them. I mean, this is what they did when they gave up their addresses and stuff. They said, I'm here illegally. So yeah.
Okay, so those folks that you're seeing, primarily from Mexico? What would the percentage be that you see?
You know, I would say my clients are primarily from Mexico, yes.
80%? 90?
90%.
90%?
90%.
You deal with people from other countries, though?
Correct. Yeah,
mainly Central America, I suspect.
Correct. Guatemala, Honduras.
Okay. When they come to you, what are they looking for?
They're looking for certainty. They're looking for safety. They're looking for protection. They're looking for a status like a green card, legal permanent residency, that allows them to live and work here freely in the United States without the fear of deportation.
That's separate and apart from DACA?
That's separate and apart from DACA, yeah.
Okay, so could they have been kids who didn't sign up for DACA, but now they want protection because they think it's coming down?
Yeah, so, I mean, some of the legislation that is being discussed does allow for people that didn't sign up for DACA, you know, certain dreamers that didn't sign up to now obtain protections later, right? Legal permanent residency status. But for the most part, the conversation is mostly centered around dreamers who have signed up for the DACA program, right?
If somebody got caught up in this area where their DACA had expired and they got stopped and they got picked up,
okay,
would you as an attorney be able to prevent, they would have some court avenues,
correct,
to slow it down or stop it, right?
Correct, yeah. So anyone that's stopped without lawful status has due process rights. So before they can be removed from the United States, in most situations, they actually have to go appear before an immigration judge. During that time that they're waiting to go before the immigration judge, they may possibly have a number of statuses they can adjust to or switch to. And so, you know,
do you have to know that, or does the judge lay it out for them?
Oh no, the judge will not lay it out for them.
You've got to know what's going on.
It's beholden upon the attorney to say, hey, you know, what's your family history, what's your work history, what country are you going to, you know, basically looking for some sort of way to keep them here, and not circumventing the laws, but saying, is there some lawful way for you to, you know, remain in the United States? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This idea that most are, we get kind of a presentation on the news a lot because the activists present a certain face to us.
Okay. Yeah.
A college or high school grad. Dulce Matisse comes to mind. She's an activist. You bring her out, it's a very impressive package.
Right.
Are most of these people we're talking about not highly skilled, not graduates of college and high school? Or what is the reality of who these kids are? You know,
that's a good question. I would say my clients that I have that are DACA recipients, they're about 50-50. And I'd say 50-50, one half are individuals who just received a high school diploma or a GAD and maybe did some college but not much. Never graduated. The rest are all graduates. So
by the way, that's not, Phil, that's not to demean because we need the labor, right?
Right.
These are people working. A lot of these folks are working.
And these are good workers. I mean, these clients that I'm talking about that didn't go to college, they're working for cities. You know, they're working professional jobs. They're managing construction sites. These aren't individuals that, you know, and I don't mean to demean anyone working at McDonald's, but they didn't go and take their DACA and work there. You know, they went and they found skilled labor positions. Do they need, you know, with E-Verify, you need a Social Security number. Where are these kids on Social Security numbers? So what happens is, as soon as you get the EAD card, so every DACA recipient is given an employment authorization document. That's what's also given to them as part of the DACA program. Once they have that, they're eligible then to go to the Social Security office and sign up for or apply for a Social Security number.
Do they do it?
Yeah, they do. They follow the laws. They pay their taxes. They pay Social Security. You know, they fund Social Security. These are individuals that definitely follow the law because they know they have to. They know if they don't, what's the next step is they get put in removal proceedings, and they don't want that. They don't want to break laws.
This is really interesting. I wanted to show you tape number 6. This was a young woman out at ASU,
okay,
who did a post about how she's paying taxes. And all hell broke loose. She's here. She's a dreamer.
Oh, interesting.
Take a look at this.
Okay.
There was one where it was a character of Trump holding a head, and they photoshopped my head in it, throwing me over the wall that he's going to build on the border of Mexico and the United States.
Arizona State junior and DACA recipient Belen Sisa says she didn't expect the backlash she got on social media after posting a photo this past weekend that she paid her taxes.
Xenophobia and racism is still very well and alive in this country, and it is an issue that people want to ignore, but is very real.
Sisa came to Arizona when she was 6 from Argentina with her parents. She's protected from deportation under the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program.
Why are we all fighting amongst each other and asking me as a DACA recipient who works and pays my taxes for me to show you my taxes when you can't even ask the president who is running this country to show you his taxes?
The dreamer wanted to make it clear with her post that she was a contributing member of the United States.
I wanted people to see that everything that they've ever heard of is not true, that people can pay taxes without a Social Security number.
It's interesting. When you put a face to it, it gets a little more complicated. When you see her, you say, most people will say, she just looks like an American girl to me.
Right.
Right.
And I think that's what we all need to focus on, is humanizing this issue, right? I mean, we talk about dreamers, we talk about DACAs, but those are just labels given to this group of people. Who are these individuals? I mean, that's why I appreciate that you're asking
that's why I
questions
had you
about
on the
these
program. Yeah, that's why I had you on the program, because everything gets kind of caricatured. The president gets caricatured as a hater. The DACA kids get caricatured. It's
one big caricature, and it's not appropriate, because these are human beings who have lived lives as Americans, but without the formal recognition.
Okay, so tell me, for the folks who say, hey, look, I don't care what the parents did, they're here illegally, I want them out. What would you say to those folks?
Oh, man.
Would they be losing something?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest stressors, anxieties that DACA recipients face is the threat of their parents leaving, right, being deported. You know, that's the other call that I filled a lot of, is someone calling me up and say, hey, listen, I'm protected, but what can I do for my mom? What can I do for my dad? And when I tell them nothing, it's heartbreaking. You know, they need those individuals here. They need those support systems here. They don't want their parents also going back to a country that they haven't lived in for 20, 30 years. So it creates more stress and anxiety in those individuals. And mental health is so important, you know.
You are right. Okay, now let's get over some of the political hurdles.
Okay.
The common caricature is that Democrats want these folks here because they're going to vote Democrat. Do you buy that?
No, I don't. And I think Representative Gallego, who you had on last week, set this up perfectly. These are Americans. I don't think anyone, you know, in the back of everyone's minds, sure, we know that they're going to be clients to attorneys, right? So there's someone else that if there's an application that's created, that person's going to pay an attorney to create that application for them. So it's a funding source for them. And it's the same argument of, you know, now we have voters voting for Democrats. You know, those exist. Those ideas, they exist. They're probably going to happen. But is that the reason anyone's doing this? No. It's a humanitarian issue. These are human beings who are good people that don't deserve to be sent to a country that they don't know. You know, that they deserve protections and the right to work here in the United States, just like anyone else, in my opinion.
We're going to take a break here. Phil Ortega, Mesa-based attorney with the law firm of Udall Shumway. He is, would we call you an immigration attorney?
Immigration attorney.
Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, back with Phil. More discussion on the DACA debate that goes on and rages on in this country. Back in a minute on Newsmaker Sunday. Back with immigration attorney Phil Ortega of the Mesa law firm of Udall and Shumway. He's our guest this week on Newsmaker Sunday. We're talking about DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, which is basically the dreamers you've been hearing about. The names are interchangeable, right?
Yeah, dreamers were just this tag given way back when the DREAM Act was first introduced, and it was introduced way back in 2001. So this has been, legislation that has historically, existed. It's just now taken on, a stronger meaning because of the rescission of the DACA program, which is what President Obama introduced in 2007.
If somebody wanted a tidy definition of who a dreamer or a DACA kid was, what would you tell them?
Well, when the program first started, it was a young adult who was younger than the age of 31, but older than the age of 16, who had been here before a certain date, who had gotten a college education, joined the military, or been pursuing, high school diploma, right, or a GED, and been pursuing one of the both, and had a clean criminal record. That's who that individual was. Because of the age, the age constraints we're talking about, it was usually an individual who was brought here as a kid before they ever could make the decision to leave a country and go live somewhere else.
Their parents brought them here.
Right.
Usually what age?
Oh, man, I've had them as young as 8 months. I've had clients as young as 8 months say, yeah, I was brought here before I knew anything.
I've seen it on the border.
Yeah.
Went down there a few years ago, and in a group that Customs and Border Protection stopped.
Okay.
There was a kid no more than a year old who was in that group.
Yeah.
There were several young kids.
I believe it. I mean, parents are escaping something, and they're going to bring their kids with them because they hear about America, the land of opportunity, the great education they could receive, and they brought kids for those reasons.
Let me ask you something, Phil. It's been debated that in the past we might have done this better when we didn't seal up the border, that workers from Mexico would come up here, work, and go home. Right. They really didn't want to become Americans. They wanted to remain Mexicans, natives of Mexico. They really didn't want to become Americans. They simply wanted to work here and earn money and go back home and help their family out. Would that be a better way to go here? Are we assuming that everybody wants to be an American, and maybe they don't?
This is, I mean, great question. Definitely speculation on my part in that I think it would be. However, I mean, we also have to think about the economic situation in the places these people are coming from. You know, I've been to northern Mexico. My wife has family in northern Mexico. These are dire economic situations that these small towns are in. So I don't know how feasible it would be for someone to do that nowadays, considering the danger. I mean, not just economic, but the danger that they face in these towns that they'd be returning to. So maybe at one point this would have been a good idea. But if infrastructure in northern Mexico, some of these other countries that individuals are coming from was better.
Are most of the people in DACA, did they come here over the border illegally, or did they come in on some kind of visa and just overstay?
It's a split. It really is.
50-50.
Yeah, about. So some of them came in illegally. You know, you hear about border crossings. You know, they were brought that way. They were brought across the border back when the security at the border wasn't what it is now, in cars. Some of them had visas. The primary one being the B1, B2 tourist visa. You know, people from Mexico can also get that visa. The children will get it, the families would get it, and they'd come across the border, and then they decided just to stay one day. Maybe they got a job, maybe something else happened that just one day they said, you know what, we're not going to actually go back as our visa says we have to, we're going to stay here.
Let's talk about the president's 4 pillars, and I'll start with his State of the Union, tape 3. Take a listen.
The President of the United States.
President Trump got high marks from Republicans for his State of the Union address, a speech in which he extended an olive branch to Democrats.
Tonight, I am extending an open hand to work with members of both parties, Democrats and Republicans, to protect our citizens of every background, color, religion, and creed.
Finding a fix for DACA is the most urgent priority. Protections for so-called dreamers end on March the 5th. President Trump last night presented what he called a down-the-middle compromise.
A detailed proposal that should be supported by both parties as a fair compromise, one where nobody gets everything they want, but where our country gets the critical reforms it needs and must have.
The deal offers a path to citizenship for 1.8 million dreamers, 3 times the number of people President Obama protected. But Democrats say the trade-offs over border security, chain migration, and the visa lottery are something they just won't swallow.
It was dangerous what he said last night, and it has instilled fear. As I say over and over, what he is doing brings tears to the eyes of the Statue of Liberty and instills fear in the hearts of people who are concerned about our dreamers.
And some late new developments in the case of the FISA memo. Fox News is told by a senior administration official that late yesterday afternoon, 5 career officials from the FBI came over to the White House to meet with the Chief of Staff, John Kelly, to go over the latest version of that memo, which the White House may release as early as late tomorrow morning. At the White House, John Roberts, Fox News.
Okay, Phil Ortega, immigration attorney, kind enough to join us on Newsmaker Sunday. So let's go over the president's pillars. First, a path to citizenship. He likes to say, I'm talking about 3 times as many as President Obama talked about. President Obama talked about protecting 800,000. The president's talking about 1.8 million.
Right. And he issued that, you know, later in a phone call to a bunch of different people, and it's really a one sheet. We don't have any exact legislation now on what he's proposing. So who these individuals are, we have an idea of who he's talking about, but we don't know exactly.
We think it's probably DACA folks who never applied.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, current DACA individuals, so basically people that are DACA recipients and those that did not apply.
When President Obama extended that, and some signed up, some didn't.
Right.
Why do you suppose so many didn't sign up?
It was that fear that we were talking about. Again, when you signed up for DACA, what you were telling the United States government is, look at me, I'm here illegally. This is my address. This is who my family is. I'm going to go get a Social Security card where you can track me. There's a real fear in giving up that, you know, going from anonymity, where you can work kind of behind the scenes, to now putting in the shadows.
Former President Obama talked about.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Second pillar: securing the border. Can your folks get on board with securing the border?
I think so, and you know, the House legislation, the name is escaping me right now, but that one has you know, Democrats and
We're looking
Republicans.
At the wall prototypes.
Oh, those prototypes, and they remind me of Full Metal Jacket. Do you remember the walls at the?
Well, this one we're looking at is actually the one the Border Patrol favors because they can see through it. They want to know what's on the other side.
You know, the border wall, though, I'm okay with it. If it makes people feel safer here in America, I'm okay with it. I think it's a terribly expensive and fiscally irresponsible to spend all that money on a wall, because here's the thing, people are going to find a way through it, around it, and over it, right? Life finds a way. People are going to find a way.
Most are coming in on visas and overstaying.
Exactly.
So that's something that has... If it comes down to give the president his wall and he's going to give you normalization for 1.8 million, are you good with that?
I'm signing it right now. If it's just those 2 points alone, I would agree to that.
Okay, then when we come back on Newsmaker Sunday, we'll talk about the 2 other pillars.
Okay. Ending
the green card lottery and the end of chain migration. We'll talk about those. Phil Ortega is our guest, immigration attorney on Newsmaker Sunday. Back in a minute. Okay, the 2 final pillars of President Trump's immigration discussion during his State of the Union. And we're talking about it with immigration attorney Phil Ortega. Okay, number 3 in the chain. There was first path to citizenship, that's 1. Securing the border, 2. Ending the green card lottery is 3.
Right. So this is the diversity visa lottery, which enables individuals, and only 50,000 a year, it's capped, to actually be able to enter the country, you know, legally with a legal permanent residence. You know, this is one of those things that it helps the United States to bring in immigrants from other countries, right? I mean, we bring in, we help stabilize the workforce with these individuals. So it's a good thing. It really is.
Should we be kind of screening for the best and brightest, quote unquote, whatever that means?
Well, that's where I, you know, kind of am at ends with it. So the diversity visa lottery, you actually do have to have a professional skill or a high school diploma, right? You just can't be anyone. You do have to have that at a minimum. Some other things as well, right? Pass a criminal background. It would be nicer if we can bring in those merit-based individuals that President Trump discusses. I mean, I wouldn't see a problem with that. You know, just ending the lottery entirely, I think, is problematic.
Okay, so maybe that's a point of negotiation.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, the final one, end of chain migration.
Yeah.
And that's now become a pejorative term.
Right. I think so. Right now, a legal permanent resident can bring in his spouse and his minor children. Once that individual gets to citizenship, then they can bring in their children over the age of 21, parents and siblings. Okay? That's what they're talking about taking away, is those later categories.
So bringing in cousins and aunts and uncles, that is not part of it. So that's been demagogued.
Not happening. I was on Twitter the other day, and someone said, well, I saw someone sponsor their cousin. Well, we have to be careful to understand that petitioning, being eligible to petition for a family member, is different than being able to sponsor someone. I can petition for those people that I just mentioned, but I can sponsor my cousin, I can sponsor, and what sponsorship means is I'm just willing to sign on a contract that I send to USCIS that I'm willing to be financially responsible for that individual if that individual ever comes on hard times.
Does it give them any further place in line or move them up in line? It doesn't.
It doesn't, no.
Okay.
No.
We've had, obviously, illegal immigrants commit crimes here.
Correct.
This has been a big, big issue. When you see coverage of this stuff, what do you think?
I think it's fear-mongering. You know, I grew up in tough streets of South Phoenix. It was ugly. It wasn't nice. You know, but the individuals that I grew up around, they weren't all bad people just because some of the other people in that same neighborhood had committed crimes, right? It's the same thing for immigrants. Sure, we hear about MS-13. They've done nasty, horrible things, right? But that shouldn't then be the general narrative for everyone that falls under that immigrant category. I mean, that's terrible. That's just fear-mongering. We're taking what a small percentage of people are doing and placing blame over an entire group of people.
Have you had a DACA person, a kid, who is a pretty good kid, everything's good, and then something happens, they get in a fight or an assault charge happens, and then are they subject to deportation?
Thankfully, no, I haven't. But, you know, I have had those calls where someone said...
or a DUI or whatever.
Right. All it takes is a significant misdemeanor, more than 5 days in jail. Anything like that, you're no longer DACA eligible.
So you're off the rolls at that point?
You're off the rolls, and you now face urine removal proceedings.
Deportation.
Right. And then ICE can decide, hey, yeah, we're going to go get this kid.
How much time do we have? For just 10 seconds. Are you hopeful that we're going to get a deal?
I'm hopeful, but how far that deal extends is what I'm concerned about. I think it's just going to cover, I think at a minimum what I'm hopeful for is that we're going to get a deal that covers the dreamers that are actually DACA recipients
When
now.
we get one, we'll have you back to break it down. Phil, good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome, and that was very interesting. Phil Ortega, Mesa attorney, immigration attorney. We'll see you next week on Newsmaker Sunday.